The Eastern Roman Empire, whose capital was Constantinople, was the intellectual and cultural hub of the Christian world. It reached its peak in 565 AD after the Western Roman Empire fell. However, within 200 years, it was a fraction of its former size, as its territories were violently conquered by Muslim forces. Constantinople eventually fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. In 2006, then Pope Benedict delivered a lecture at the University of Regensburg in Germany. The lecture was titled Faith, Reason and the University, Memories and Reflections. In the lecture, Benedict reflected on his experience of teaching at the University of Bonn. He also referenced a dialogue between Byzantine Emperor Emmanuel II Palaeologos and an educated Persian on the theme of holy war.
In the seventh conversation, edited by Professor Khoury, the Emperor touches on the theme of the holy war. The Emperor must have known that Surah 256 reads, "There is no compulsion in religion." According to some of the experts, this is probably one of the surahs of the early period when Muhammad was still powerless and under threat. But naturally, the emperor also knew the instructions developed later and recorded in the Quran concerning holy war. Without descending to details, such as the difference in treatment accorded to those who have the book and the infidels, he addresses his interlocutor with a startling brusqueness, a brusqueness that we find unacceptable, on the central question about the relationship between religion and violence in general, saying, "Show me just what Muhammad brought that was new, and there you will find things only evil and inhuman, such as his command to spread by the sword the faith he preached." The emperor, after having expressed himself so forcefully, goes on to explain in detail the reasons why spreading the faith through violence is something unreasonable. Violence is incompatible with the nature of God and the nature of the soul. God, he says, is not pleased by blood, and not acting reasonably is contrary to God's nature. Faith is born of the soul, not the body. Whoever would lead someone to faith needs the ability to speak well and to reason properly, without violence and threats. To convince a reasonable soul, one does not need a strong arm or weapons of any kind, or any other means of threatening a person with death.
Christianity encourages us to love our enemies, as it relates in the Gospel of Luke.
But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you.
Islam is different. An article on the Race Council Cymru website, written by Shazia Ali, is titled, "Is Islamophobia an issue the Welsh should worry about?" Islamophobia means the irrational fear of Islam. It's not clear from the article as to what constitutes an irrational fear, as opposed to a rational fear of Islam. The author writes,
"Well, it looks like we found the cure for racism. Become a Muslim. We're practically immune. Hi, my name's Shazia, but you can call me Shaz. Nice to meet you. I'm the new columnist for Race Council Cymru. I'll be sharing my personal thoughts and opinions in this monthly column, discussing what's trending on race equality in Wales. I hope you'll be interested in my views on topics of race and how they're reported. I think my perspective will be a fresh outlook on these issues, as it's not often you hear the views of someone in a similar position to me."
Dr. Tareq Al-Suwaidan is head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Kuwait.
And I have trained the youth from the East and the West. Yahi, for example, I do a leadership training in Istanbul every year for about 130 young men and women that we choose from all over the world, usually from 30 countries in the world. Every year after year, the best among them are the youth that are coming from the West. Better than the all youth in the Muslim world. Of course, there are exceptions, but in general, I'm talking. What is this? This is amazing. They have been raised with an Islamic value, with adherence, true adherence to Islam, with huge awareness, and in every part of business or professionalism, in every area of life, they are really, really very high standard. So your youth have the two powers in their hand. They have the power of Islam and they have the power of the Western world. They know what is going on. And there's something psychological happening. When I went to the States, I was a student. I never migrated. I never applied for their passport. But I have seen many of my friends begging to become Americans. And they had this inferior feeling in their heads and in their actions. You do not see this in the second generation and third generation. They are British, they are Americans, they are French. They should act like that. This is your country, and you should pressure your politicians to change their stand, and you should make them fall down in elections if they don't. So you don't have this fear that the migrants had. So use it. Use this, all of this. So use Islam and your area of business, and use your citizenship to support your ummah. This is what you should do.
Ali is the administrator for the We Are Wales website. In her Race Council Cymru article, she continues.
I think we need to address the elephant in the room, or should I say on the page. The recent catastrophic events in France obviously has a major effect on this issue and leads to further Islamophobia. However, je ne suis pas Charlie. I am not Charlie. I believe that there is a difference between free speech and hate speech, between free speech and intolerance. The Prophet Muhammad is more important to Muslims than their own parents. So yes, I am offended by these images. They hurt.
Muhammad himself was very sensitive to criticism. Jews in Medina who failed to convert to Islam were punished. The men were beheaded and the women and children taken into slavery, as in the case of the Banu Qurayza tribe.
The History of Al-Tabari, Volume 8, page 35. The messenger of God went out into the marketplace of Medina and had trenches dug in it. Then he sent for them and had them beheaded in those trenches. One group of prisoners was taken near the trench. They were forced to kneel down. Ali started to behead their necks. Other Muslim soldiers followed his action. The heads fell into the trench. In the meantime, another group of prisoners was taken near the trench. The Muslim soldiers beheaded them one by one. The Jewish women screamed, crying hysterically. The Muslim soldiers began to drag the boys away, while their mothers tried to restrain them. Children of 10, 11, 12 years old were beheaded as well. A Jewish woman who killed a Muslim soldier with a stone mile was also beheaded. Huyay bin Khattab, the leader of Banu Nadir, was taken to the execution field. Remember, he was the father of Safiya binti Huyay, who later was forced to become Muhammad's wife after the big robbery of the Jewish Khaybar.
O Jewish people, there is nothing wrong with God's commandments. This massacre of the children of Israel was ordained by God.
Then he kneeled near the trench. The Muslim soldier beheaded him. In just one day, between 800 and 900 Jewish male captives were beheaded. The History of Al-Tabari, Volume 8, page 35. They were brought out to him in groups. Among them were the enemy of God, Huyay bin Akhtab, and Ka'b bin Asad, the head of the tribe. They were numbered 600 or 700, the largest estimate says they were between 800 to 900. The affair continued until the messenger of God had finished with them. After the mass beheadings occurred, Muhammad took 1/5 of the loot of war.
This part is mine. Divide the rest of the booty among yourself.
Muhammad divided the rest of property, women, and children of Banu Qurayza among the Muslims.
Let's sell them to make a lot of money. We will be rich.
According to Hadith Sunan Abu Dawud, number 3946, the price of a slave at that time was around 800 dirham or $2,500. By having slaves of 1,000 Jewish women and children, the Muslims gained a lot of wealth from this jihad. Muhammad succeeded in ridding the entire Jewish community of Kinuka, Nadir, Qurayza from Medina. He also managed to confiscate all their land, property, women, and children.
I came here with nothing, but look at what I have now.
This means a guest came and was respected, but he later killed the host, robbed the house, and enslaved his wife and children.
Muhammad's forces would later defeat the Jews at the Battle of Khaybar.
Let's take it back to the year 629, in what is today Saudi Arabia. Khaybar was an oasis in the Arabian desert, home to Jewish tribes who had turned barren land into a thriving community. The Jews were farmers, tradesmen, and scholars. At this time, Muhammad had a growing community, but at the same time he faced resistance from many communities and tribes in Arabia. Some of his own people, the Quraysh tribe in Mecca, had rejected him and his message. Muhammad needed to secure resources, stability, and authority in order to continue spreading Islam, and that meant finding alliances and sometimes seizing wealth. In this context, Khaybar, a prosperous and strategically located oasis primarily inhabited by Jewish tribes, was seen as an important target. It was a wealthy, independent community that held valuable resources, and its neutrality or lack of allegiance posed a potential threat to Muhammad's efforts to consolidate influence in the region. So they attacked the Jewish tribes living there in what is known today as the Battle of Khaybar. And these Jews, they lost everything. They lost their lands, their rights, and their security. Those who survived were only allowed to stay if they agreed to pay tax on their own land. Their freedom was gone, and their lives were no longer their own. So when you hear people chanting Khaybar, Khaybar, they're not chanting about peace, justice, or human rights. They're celebrating a massacre. Think about it. If any other group chanted in celebration of massacring other people, they would have been condemned. Yet somehow, Khaybar is tolerated, dismissed as political expression. But here's the truth. Khaybar is not about land or justice. It's about erasing the Jews. It's not just directed at Israel or Zionists like they would want you to believe, it's directed at Jews. The people who chant Khaybar are not calling for a free Palestine, they're calling for a world without Jews, wherever they are. And let me add some perspective here. In Israel, Muslims have freedom. They are doctors, teachers, politicians, and business owners. They worship freely and live in a society that respects their rights. Israel is a country where Jews and Arabs live side by side. Meanwhile, in many neighboring Muslim-majority countries, Jews were forced out. Synagogues were destroyed, Jewish history erased, and today there's barely a trace of Jewish life left in those lands. The chant of Khaybar represents the desire to, first of all, erase the Jewish people, but also to erase any safe haven for them. In fact, it was never about land or borders. It's always been about wiping out Jewish identity. But the Jewish people and Israel have moved forward. They have built a resilient society one where they can live without fear of being driven out. And while some may still cling to Khaybar, dreaming of a world without Jews, Israel stands strong as a beacon of freedom, a refuge for those who have faced centuries of hate. So let's be absolutely clear. Israel is not going anywhere. It's a safe haven for the Jews and everyone else who wish to live in peace. And, those who chant Khaybar may wish otherwise, but their hatred is outdated. And Israel doesn't need to apologize for existing, for being strong, and for defending itself. There you go. This is the real meaning behind the chant Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yahud.
This is a chant that has now been heard in Ali's home city of Swansea. Former Muslim Ayaan Hirshi Ali describes her experience of growing up in Somalia.
I, like the majority of other Somali girls, underwent female genital mutilation, or purification as it was described. That should tell you all you need to know about the status of women in my native society. Clan life based on Islam was a life of violence. I was beaten constantly as a child, and for many years I thought that this was normal. Death was also normal. People died all the time of violence and of disease. From Allah we come and to Allah we return was a phrase I heard constantly. To this day, when filling out medical forms that ask about my family history of cancer and such things, I find myself unable to answer. Death was such a common occurrence in my early years that we barely bothered to inquire into its causes. When I was a teenager, living with my family in Kenya, along came the Muslim Brotherhood, incidentally, the Islamist group that spawned Hamas. The Brotherhood offered something more. It offered a life of service to Allah. I felt a glorious purpose. We had a mission to convert people to the true Islam. There was intellectual nourishment, or at least that's what I thought, because we were required to study the Quran and the Hadith. We were a community, a true brotherhood, united with a divine purpose. And Islamism went further than the passivity in the face of death that I had grown up with. It embraced death. To die for Allah was the most wonderful thing I could imagine at that age. I would be guaranteed a place in paradise. It was through clan life, the Muslim Brotherhood, and my Islamic schooling that I became an anti-Semite. The worst insult in the Somali community was to be called a Jew. Not that any of us actually knew one. To be called a Jew was so abhorrent, some felt justified in killing anyone who so dishonored them with this slur. I vividly remember sitting with my female fellows in mosques, cursing Israel and praying Allah to destroy them. We were certainly not interested in a peaceful two-state solution. We were taught to want to see Israel wiped off the map. The elimination of Israel was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when. For us as Muslims, Israel did not represent a territorial dispute. To want Israel's destruction was an act of worship. To entertain notions of a two-state solution was an act of sin, a transgression, a betrayal of God, His Prophet, and the Ummah. When I was 16, my teacher of religion was Sister Aziza. She read to us the Quran's lurid descriptions of the everlasting fire that burns flesh and dissolves skin, the place preserved for Jews, their eternal home where they belong. Our religious teachers described Jews as physically monstrous, with horns coming from their heads, out of which flew devils that would corrupt the world. Jews controlled everything. They told us, and it was the duty of Muslims to destroy them. We made no distinction between liberal and Orthodox Jews, or between Jews who settled Palestine and those who opposed the settlements, between religious or atheist Jews. We also made no distinction between adult Jews and children, male, female, mothers, old and young. To us, Jews were Jews, all of them evil and all of them enemies of Islam and all that's good, true, and decent. Our mission was to single-mindedly destroy them through prayer, through propaganda, and for those lucky enough to have the means to kill them. It was a lot to take in for a teenager who read Western romance novels in secret. But to my shame, I believed those things. Much later, I fled to the Netherlands to escape a marriage arranged by my father to a man in Canada. Looking back, I recalled the violence, hatred, and discord of the societies I had grown up in. I was shocked by my new home in Holland. It was radically different from anything I had known. Here in Holland, there was a separation between religion and politics. Women had equal rights and could live independently and make their own choices. There was a concept of the common good that I had never known before. There was no talk of death, no enemies to fight or pray against, and no bloodline or religion that could only be defended by waging war. The more I understood about this new society, the more I liked it and admired it. I assimilated. I lived life as a Dutch woman, suppressing the dissonance I felt at betraying my religion and upbringing. I abandoned the ideas of Islamism and I educated myself on anti-Semitism. But then 9/11/2001 happened, and Osama bin Laden was frank about his motivation. He despised the West. This forced me into a crisis of belief, and I had no other choice but to leave Islam, to be fully intellectually honest with myself. As I became more and more involved in politics and activism, I watched with great interest and even greater dismay as Western leaders responded to Islamism. They chose to believe that bin Laden and his Islamist ilk did not mean what they said. They chose to believe that multiculturalism was the solution. But I saw that multiculturalism was really an embrace of clanism and primitivism. It segregated Muslim immigrants into ghettos and allowed them to subject women to arranged marriages, Sharia law, and other abuses. Another baffling Western response was to engage with nations such as Saudi Arabia and Pakistan to help them assimilate their Muslim immigrants. The Netherlands and other European countries asked them to help deal with Islamist terror. Yet, Saudi Arabia was for many years the world's biggest funder of da'wah, that is, Islamist proselytization. Domestically, Western leaders listened to Islamist infiltrators with an agenda, whom they naively saw as moderate representatives of Muslim communities. When asked about how to integrate Muslims in the West, these so-called community leaders unsurprisingly demanded separate Muslim schools, separate media platforms, separate courts, and a victim status to be protected from Islamophobia.
As Minister of Social Justice, I would like to thank our Muslim communities for the positive contribution they make to our diverse society in Wales. The Welsh Government fully supports Islamophobia Awareness Month and condemns any form of discrimination against our Muslim communities and the Islamic faith. We are committed to delivering an anti-racist Wales by 2030 through our ambitious and radical action plan.
In some parts of the occupied territories, teachers have been very successful in educating children to hate Jews.
انه نعمل حرب انه نفرجن اليهود انه احنا مش انه احنا مش شاطرين، احنا قوايا كمان. في ناس بحبوا فلسطين بدهم يحاربوا وبضحوا بدمهم عشان فلسطين. انا بدي اهزمهم بالحرب، بدي اهزمهم.
بيعلمونا أن الأقصى إلنا وإلنا يعني الحق، يعني إلنا فلسطين والأراضي كلها إلنا، لأنهم بسبب كذبهم وانتهاكاتهم إنهم يقولون أن الهيكل تحت المسجد الأقصى، ولا مرة إنه يكون الهيكل تحت المسجد الأقصى.
أنا بقرأ اليهود.
بعلمونا إن الصهيونية هم أعدائنا وهم أهم شيء لازم يسوي فيهم عملية.
يعني إنهم بيعلمونا بالمدرسة إنهم إرهابيين
بيحكوا لنا عن اليهود إنهم هدول مش مناح وهدول بقتلوا قاعدين بشبابنا. بيحكوا لنا هدول غدارين، وبيحكوا لنا إنه هدول بغدرونا، هدول مش مناح. إذا بطعن بدعس عليهم. عمل عمليات.
كيف يعني؟
الدعس، عمليات الدعس، عمليات الطعن والاشتباك المصالح في المخيمات.
ايش اكيد هدول العمليات ترفع الراس ولفلسطين. العمليات هاي تاعت الدعس والسكاكين هاي اشي بيرفع الراس لفلسطين.
اذا بدك بطلع بستشهد عادي. انا ان شاء الله اساعد الشباب وان شاء الله اصير مقاوم بالمستقبل مع الدولة الإسلامية.
A volunteer for Zaka, the Israeli disaster response team, explains what he saw after the October the 7th attacks.
In my life, we never dealt in a situation like that and never faced a situation like that. If they would see what we saw, they wouldn't be able to function at all. Highways of bodies burned and bodies were like cut to pieces on the highways themselves. These are just starting before getting into the kibbutzim. I'm not talking about going to the kibbutzim, that's a very different stories, but just imagine driving down a highway and you can't continue driving because you're blocked with cars, hundreds of cars, that some of them were burned, some of them were blown up, and some of them there were bodies all over. So you're blocked.
Did you see violence on bodies?
For sure. There were bodies that were cut to pieces. There were bodies that were...
Why were they cut to pieces?
Well, when they had time, they came to different places. So they came to the Nova Festival. They had time. They saw that they had time. They could do whatever they want with the bodies. When they got to a certain place, they had time, so they can cut the bodies to pieces, just play with them, do whatever they want. And
out of hate for Jews.
Out of hate for Jews, and not only hate for Jews, also for hate for even Muslims that were working for Israelis. I dealt with on Highway 34. We had a van full of Palestinians that lived in Gaza. They had green to the passes, and they were butchered in their own van.
The
Palestinians. They didn't look like Jews at all. They were Palestinians, and they were wearing, and they had all the whatever it is, and they were butchered in their own cars because they were coming to work for Jews.
Did you see burnt babies?
Yes, there were houses that were burned babies. There was a main question that a lot of people ask if we saw babies in ovens. Well, I'll tell you straight out, there was no electricity. So people were hiding their children in closets in different places. We found children in different places, hidden. We did not find, me personally, I personally did not find babies in ovens that I can say, yes, there were babies in ovens. No, I say it straight out, Me personally, I did not take care of babies in ovens, but we found babies burned in their own beds, in their own houses, and different places. There were houses that you cannot believe what happened. And it's a funny question. Did you see beheaded people? Or did you see beheaded babies? Well, when you see a body in one room and then you see a head in a different room, there's no question if the body was beheaded. For sure, if you throw 7 grenades into a bedroom, everything blows up. So, were those bodies cut to pieces? Yes. You need to understand the situation. Working for 2.5 weeks collecting bodies and parts of bodies, we collected 1,200 bodies of Israeli citizens, close to 100 bodies of workers, Thai workers and different workers all around the kibbutzim that were helping or working in different kibbutzim. But we collected 1,500 bodies of terrorists. If you understand what we as Zaka members do, we deal with humanity. It doesn't make difference the culture of the person, whoever it is. We understand that when you deal with humanity, you have to understand that you're dealing with God's creation.
Dr. Abdul-Azim Ahmed is Deputy Director of the Centre for the Study of Islam in the UK at Cardiff University. He is also Secretary General for the Muslim Council of Wales. Dr. Abdul-Azim Ahmed seems to be a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood. In an explanation of the October 7th attacks, the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Kuwait illuminates the difference between Judeo-Christian and Islamic spirituality.
الذي رأيت في 7 أكتوبر هو معجزة تخطيطية يجب أن تدرس في أرقى الجامعات لأن تخطيط شيء غير عادي وبتنسيق غير عادي. فالجماعة قاموا بما يطلب منهم وزيادة، وكونهم صمدوا بالنسبة لي هذا هو انتصار. الآن بعض الناس يبكي إن والله غزة دمرت وكذا، صحيح، بس انت يعني أولا هذا ليس على أيدينا بأيدينا، انتم احسبوها بالنسبة والتناسب. لما يكون عندك شعب من 1,000,000 ويموت منهم 10,000، انت قاعد تتكلم عن 1 بال1000، صح؟ لكن لما يكون عندك 100 مليون ويروح منهم 10,000، النسبة تصبح لا شيء. طيب إذا عندك 1.5 مليار وراح منهم 50,000، طبعا كل نفس غالية عندنا، بس أنا قاعد أحاول أبسطها لكم ونقارنها كم أذانا وكم أذاهم. ليش الواحد عندهم غالي؟ لأنهم يبذلون الملايين عشان يجيبوه.
It is as yet unclear whether the Centre for the Study of Islam in the UK will be teaching on how to progress the jihad through gang rape, beheadings, the burnings of babies, the torture of adults and children in front of their parents will be part of the syllabus for the coming year. In July 2025, Plaid Cymru Senedd member Peredur ap Griffiths wrote,
I have always believed that anyone moving to Wales to settle down has the right to call themselves Welsh if they so wish. The grifters seeking to create hatred and set one group of people against another cannot undo that rich history of community cohesion that we have had in parts of our country for generations. This was brought home at the last Plaid Cymru Spring Conference, where I sponsored an event that celebrated the contribution of Welsh Muslims to civic society. During that session, we had talks from Abyd Quinn-Aziz, who was a lecturer in social work and chair of Plaid Cymru BME.
So I was last week with brother Ismail Haniya. Ismail Haniya is the leader of Hamas. See, with all of this bombing, Hamas lost less than 20% of its power. So it can be a very long battle. And that will destroy the Israeli society. I, myself, the leaders of Hamas, are not looking at this battle as the liberation of Palestine. The liberation of Palestine cannot be done by a small group. And they are not fighting Israel. They are fighting the major geopolitical forces of the world. They are fighting Israel with all of its support from the greatest empires in the world. Russia has supported Israel for a long period of time. Now America and the Europeans are supporting clearly. So history is repeating itself. Yes, we are a small force within these major players. But again, remember history. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised us victory over these major powers. One of the promises of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that the day of judgment will not happen until Islam prevails and we become victorious and we will rule the whole world. It's up to you to believe or not. But the companions truly believed, and I hope that we truly believe, not in geopolitics, but in the promise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Hello. يابا طبعا انا قاعد اكلمك من جوبا بسيم تفتح الواتس تبع كل وهم شوف كيف القتلى شوف كيف قتلت فيديو يابا ابنك قتل يهود هاي دخلت فيديو يابا الله اكبر ربنا يحميك يا رب ربنا يحميك يابا ربنا يحميك يابا اكلمك من جوال يهوديه قتلتها وقتلت جوزها عرضوا فيديو الله اكبر ولله الحمد يابا افتح الواتس شوف كيف قتلت يابا افتح بتدفع عليك واتس كل وهم روح يابا يابا بسيم يابا يابا 10 قتلت 10 بيت يابا يابا عليك يابا اسمعك يابا طول الليل 10 بيت يابا 10 بيت قتلت طول الليل طول الليل ربنا يرحمك بالسلامة يابا انت يا عمل لك تبص مباشر من جوا لك يما طول الليل دولنا معاك يما ربنا يحميك يا الله محمود يابا محمود انت وين؟ انا جوا بلفين على جوا 10 على 10 فيديو قاعد اكلمك من جوال يهودية كذا 10 والله وانت بذكير انا هو فيهم مو فيهم عزمنا صوت الكاري انا اول فكره بدات صوت الله عز وجل انا بنحاول ارفع راسك يابا فوق ارفع راسك يابا انت في نص السكاري جوا انت جوا على المدينه في النص السكاري جوا شفت على الواتس شوف كيف الخطه قتلكم عن شوف شفت على الواتس كمان خلاص ارجعوا ايش ارجعوا مش ارجعوا انا صار الشهاده امي ودتني عشان انا بديني على مالك على وين ارجع محمود دعينا محمود دعينا طلبت على الواتس شوف كيف القتله شو انت انت على الواتس تبع انت بخيلك يا محمود زينا ربنا يوفقك يا رب ربنا يثبتك يا رب الواتس 7 الواتس 7 الواتس جوال على جمعة جوالي انا محمود وانا افتح الواتس افتحي افتح جوالك افتح جوال على الواتس افتح شوف القتل اللي قتلتم بيدي طيب امانه ترجع بالله عليك ترجع الضغط افتح جوالك ضبوله يلا